In the exciting automotive sport of autocross, the basic rules are simple. Pilot your car as quickly as you can through a coned course of turns and slaloms with the goal of achieving the lowest time possible. But while the goal of autocross is clear and the basic rules are easy enough to follow, mastering the sport requires an understanding of the physics behind racing, an ability to quickly and accurately read the course, and a proper driving technique to pull it all together and put down a winning time. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the newly relaunched To Autocross Faster Series. In this new series, we will be using the latest in data acquisition technology to record and analyze autocross runs to demystify and explain the secrets of how to autocross faster. I'm your host, Jeremy Alt, and this is the Evolution Autocrosser YouTube channel.
Oh my God!
Warning. Competitive and performance driving can be dangerous and could potentially result in property damage, serious injury, or death. The contents of this video are not intended to be taken as advice and are for entertainment and informational purposes only.
And with that out of the way, here's our lineup. In this corner, we have Brandon Slater in his STX Class 2015 Subaru BRZ, which comes in at around 2,800 pounds and puts down 200 horsepower for a power to weight of 14 pounds per horsepower. And in this corner, we have David Whitener in his ASP Class 2019 Tesla Model 3 dual motor performance model, which comes in at around 4,000 pounds and puts down 450 horsepower for a power to weight of just under 9 pounds per horsepower. So in theory, the Tesla Model 3 is definitely the faster of the two cars in a straight line. And we can confirm that this holds true in the real world with its well-documented 0 to 60 time of just 3.2 seconds compared to the Subaru BRZ's 0 to 60 of 6.3 seconds. But autocross is a sport with lots of turns and slaloms to navigate. And when you consider Newton's laws of motion and the effects of mass on centrifugal force, it's possible the extra 1,200 pounds on the faster Model 3 may give the much lighter BRZ an overall on-course advantage, particularly in the turns. But there's only one way to find out, so let's import and overlay the GPS data for the two drivers' fastest runs of the day into SoloStorm and play them back to see what happened. On the screen we have Brandon in his Subaru BRZ in orange, and David in his Tesla Model 3 in green. Right from the starting light, David in the green pulls ahead thanks to the instant availability of over 500 foot-pounds of torque, into turn 1 and into the inside, then through turn 2. David holds the lead as he puts the throttle down on the slalom section going into corner 3. Into corner 3, David takes a tight inside line to the apex, but then goes wide past the apex of turn 3 into the outfield, through the slalom. And David once again pulls even further ahead through corner 4, and then into the final slalom as they head to the finish. According to the official timing results, David in his Tesla ran a 41.678 on run 4, while Brandon in his BRZ ran a 43.501 on run 5, which means Brandon's BRZ was exactly 1.823 seconds slower than David's Model 3, confirming that the Tesla Model 3 dual motor performance model truly is a fast car on both the street and in an autocross. When you look at just the raw numbers, one may assume that because the Model 3 is faster, it must be the better car for autocross. However, these are two very different cars in different autocross classes, so in order to compare them to each other, we have to apply the class-specific PAX index to each of the competitors' raw times. When we apply the ASP class PAX index to David, we get a PAX time of 35.384. When we apply the STX class PAX index to Brandon, we get a PAX time of 35.496. The result is that David in the Tesla Model 3 was just 112 thousandths of a PAX second faster than Brandon in the BRZ. So now it's time to analyze each individual sections of the two drivers' runs to figure out exactly where and how David took the lead. Once again, here on the screen we have Brandon in his Subaru BRZ in orange and David in his Tesla Model 3 in green. This time I have segmented the course into a series of slaloms and turns, with turn 3 split into 2 halves so that we can analyze the first and second halves of this turn separately. The segmented course looks like this: Slalom 1, Turn 2, Slalom 2, Turn 3A, Turn 3B, Slalom 3, Turn 4, and finally Slalom 4 to the finish light. In Slalom 1, right from the start, David takes the lead through the first set of cones heading into Turn 1 by 0.442 seconds. When we apply the PAX indexes, we see that David was faster by 0.146 PAX seconds. The analysis here is that David traveled about 1 foot less distance and was 1 mile per hour faster entering Turn 1. The recommendation for this section is to look for those last few inches of distance on the cones and try to carry a hair more speed going into the first turn. Realigning the two drivers at the entrance to Turn 1, Brandon has the lead at first but then goes wide, while David takes a tight inside line. As a result, David was faster by 0.115 seconds. However, when we apply the PAX indexes, Brandon was faster by 0.103 PAX seconds. Further analysis is that despite taking a line that was 7.9 feet longer, Brandon managed to maintain a higher average speed and lateral G-force, which allowed him to be faster in PAX terms. However, had Brandon taken the tighter line to the inside like David and shaved off those 8 feet, Brandon may have been able to drop just enough time in this turn alone to take the overall win on this day. In Turn 2, just like in Turn 1, Brandon has the lead at first, but then goes a bit wide while David takes a tight inside line and pulls ahead. As a result, David takes the lead by 0.238 seconds. When we apply the PAX indexes, David maintains that lead by being faster by 0.051 PAX seconds. The further analysis and recommendation here is that if you tighten up the turn just a little bit more to the inside, and then track out only as you accelerate towards the exit, I think you can shave off just enough time to take the lead. In Slalom 2, David takes the lead right from the exit of Turn 2, then appears to hold steady on that lead. As a result, David is faster overall through this section by 0.573 seconds. When we apply the PAX indexes, we see David was faster by 0.185 PAX seconds. There really isn't much advice I can give in this section. The early lead taken by David at the start of this section only highlights the advantages of the instant torque that the electric motors provide when exiting slower sections. However, once Brandon got his BRZ up to speed, the gap held steady through this section. Additionally, the distance traveled by both cars is nearly identical. In the first half of Turn 3, David once again takes a tight inside line and reaches the apex of the turn 0.338 seconds quicker than Brandon. Brandon, on the other hand, takes a wider arc through the first half of Turn 3. Now, generally in autocross, the prevailing rule of the game is that the shortest line wins. However, there are exceptions to the rule, and Turn 3 is one of them. I'll explain why in just a moment, but first, let's look at the PAX times for this section. David was faster by 0.144 PAX seconds. The analysis here is that David took the inside line hitting the apex early, which the SoloStorm says was 9 feet shorter than the path taken by Brandon to the apex. The SoloStorm also shows that David had a higher overall average speed by 1.2 miles per hour. This would explain how David pulled ahead in this first half of Turn 3. But now, let's take a look at what happened in the second half of Turn 3. Right from the start, Brandon is facing the direction he wants to go, while David clearly is not. This means David now has to turn more in the second half of the turn than Brandon does in order to complete the turn. And turning the wheel more means having to slow down in order to do it. By the time Brandon hits the exit of Turn 3, he's doing just over 55 miles per hour, while David is around 47 miles per hour at the same point in time. Fortunately for David, his Model 3 has crazy amounts of acceleration, and he was also able to reach 55 miles per hour by the time he reached the exit of the turn. But all that lost speed and extra distance gave Brandon the advantage through Turn 3 by nearly half a second, at 0.475 seconds. When we apply the PAX multipliers, we see that Brandon was faster by 0.482 PAX seconds in the second half of turn 3. Before we continue to the next sector, let's take a closer look at what just happened in turn 3, because there's much more going on here than what initially meets the eye. I'm going to first start by drawing a big circle to the inside of this turn. Now imagine that the course makes a U-turn around this circle. Notice that the green path and the orange path each touch the circle at different points as they make their U-turn around the circle. You will notice that as the green line goes around the circle, it makes contact with the circle earlier in the turn, which is what's called an early apex. Whereas the orange line, which makes contact with the circle later in the turn, is called a late apex. Here is a diagram showing the proper line of a late apex in green. The late apex line takes a slightly longer line in the first half of the turn, but more than makes up for it in the second half of the turn by getting the car lined up for the exit earlier, which allows the driver to start accelerating sooner. But don't try to late apex every turn. It's typically best suited for when you have a U-turn followed by a long straightaway, because a late apex will allow for the most speed at the exit of the turn, which will give you the speed advantage going into the next sector. A word of caution: if you brake too late or go too far back at the first half of the turn, you'll typically end up in the dirt and loose gravel that the previous cars have swept back there, making it very difficult to get back on the line. But even if the course was clean, the extra distance traveled will cost more time than what can be gained by an even later apex or a longer acceleration runway. So try to keep your arc in the first half of the turn just deep enough to allow you to reap the benefits of the late apex without adding any more additional distance than necessary. Just for fun, let's see who's in the lead at this point in the run. As of right now, the SoloStorm app tells us that David is in the lead by 1.231 seconds. When we apply the PAX indexes, we see that Brandon is in the lead by 0.058 PAX seconds. That's right, Brandon. I'm not sure if you knew this, but as of right here, the exit of turn 3, you were the PAX lead. So let's take a look at the last 3 sectors and see what happened. In Slalom 3, David hit a higher top speed while Brandon was slowing more through the same section. David also traveled 1.9 less feet overall. When we apply the PAX indexes, we see that David was faster by 0.168 PAX seconds. The analysis here is that Brandon should have been carrying about 6 miles per hour more through this section, as David, whose car was 1,200 pounds heavier, was able to do so. In turn 4, the speeds were very well evenly matched. David was just a hair faster in one section, but not really enough to make a significant difference. What made the difference here is the few feet less that David traveled. When we apply the PAX indexes, we see that David was faster by a mere 0.033 PAX seconds. The analysis here is that the speed of both drivers was good, but David somehow managed to carry just a hair more speed and trimmed off a few extra feet, which gave him the lead by just 33 1/1000ths of a second. 1 inch closer to the cone and 1 more mile per hour probably would have been all that was necessary for Brandon to take the win in this sector. Finally, Slalom 4 to the finish line. Through the entire last sector, right up until the finish light, both cars were slowing the entire time to get around the final cone. Brandon started braking earlier than David and ended up braking more than David did. At the start of the final sector, David was going 55 miles per hour, and Brandon was going 50. Brandon slows to 46.2 to get around the cone, while David only slows to 47.8. So when we apply the PAX indexes, we see that David was faster by 0.021 PAX seconds. The analysis here is that Brandon overbraked this sector, plain and simple. This tiny little mistake of slowing down too much is all that's needed to account for the 21 1/1000ths of a second difference in this sector. And with that, our run versus run sector by sector analysis is complete. Before I give the final summary and suggestions, I want to thank both of our drivers, David Whitener and Brandon Slater, for their generosity in allowing me to have access to their SoloStorm data and for allowing me to analyze it and share the results publicly. I hope that all of you out there watching this video, including our two drivers today, found value in this video and learned something new that will help you improve. If you liked this video, how about a quick thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, and just to let me know you liked it, if you want to see more of this kind of content, blip the subscribe if you haven't already so you won't miss the next video. Coming soon, hopefully. So here's the final summary and suggestions. David, next time you have a U-turn into a straight, take a late apex line and you should be significantly faster overall. Other than that, killer driving on carrying that speed through the maneuvers with such a heavy car, and nice job on those tight lines in each sector. Bravo. Brandon, you can probably go a few miles per hour faster through each section. If a 4,000-pound Tesla can do it, I'm sure your 2,800-pound BRZ can do it as well. Try braking just a hair less and carry just a touch more speed, and try getting just a little bit closer to the cones to shorten your run distance in each sector. You didn't hit any cones all day, whereas David hit one on every other run, which suggests you may not be pushing the limits as much as you could. By the way, awesome job with that late apex line in turn 3. That was pro skill. So there you go. One very in-depth autocross run versus run analysis. What's interesting to note is that although both drivers made mistakes, the final official results on this day show that David and Brandon were first and second in packs overall, out of 120 drivers. Which leads me to conclude this first episode of the new How to Autocross Faster series with this thought. Autocross is not won by the fastest driver, it's won by the fast driver who makes the fewest mistakes. This is Jeremy Alt with the Evolution Autocrosser YouTube channel. Drive safe, and I hope to see you out there on the course. Take care.